Welcome to this week's edition of Investing Like an Executive. Today I'm sitting down with Ian Henderson, the founder and managing director of Superior Homes Kenya. Ian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Morning, Andrew. Welcome to Superior Homes Greenpark.
Thank you. Now, Superior Homes has been around over 20 years. I'm curious, what brought about the start, the founding, the initial idea for Superior Homes?
Okay, well, I was sitting back in Scotland in 2003, and I got a phone call from an American engineer that I'd worked with in Sudan. And he said, Ian, you've got to come to Kenya and start a real estate business. There's a new president just been elected. He's a breath of fresh air, he's stimulating investment, and there's going to be a need for middle income housing. Mm-hmm. And I've got a beautiful plot of land I'd love to show you. So come out here, have a look, and we can go from there.
Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, I came out for a week with my wife. We stayed at the Serena. I'd passed through Kenya before, but never really spent too much time here. So we stayed at the Serena and we got wheeled around the site here, talked to bankers and funders, talked to architects, felt the temperature of the room in terms of investment. And indeed, we agreed it was positive. Mm-hmm. So we bought the land, did the master planning in the UK, and went from there.
Interesting. Now, over the past 20 years, there's been a lot of shifts and changes, not only kind of on the government and policy side. Since you started, we have a new constitution, devolution, all kinds of different things. I'm curious on the real estate sector, particularly the subsector of middle income side. Where do you see the trajectory of middle income residential real estate headed, for the greater Nairobi area?
Well, I think, in broad terms, if an economy is growing above, say, 4 or 5%, then there's just going to be a requirement for more middle income housing because people are getting wealthier and they're looking to improve their housing and where they stay and where they bring up their families. So it's really dependent on the GDP growth in many ways. And from 2007 to 2013 or 14, Kenya was really motoring. And real estate was a vibrant sector. In fact, everybody and their brother wanted to get into real estate. There was hardly a person around that wasn't doing a small development somewhere. Mm-hmm. Which was interesting. I mean, it was in many ways good for the sector, but also there was a number of players that didn't really have the experience or the knowledge. So there was a few things that went wrong. But the sector was very vibrant. And then when the economy cools down, then it becomes more challenging in terms of sales and gathering in money.
Just cash flow. I know the velocity of money here in Kenya has been a bit slow recently.
I think that's putting it very mildly, actually.
Absolutely. Now, the real estate space is massively competitive. Massively competitive. I know, our team, we've met with all different types of developers, some doing standalone, some doing duplex, others doing, high-rise apartments in Kilimani. Yeah. I'm curious, how do you stay competitive and motivated in the real estate space when you have such competition?
One of the key routes to our strategy, in some ways our success, is that we do big developments, scale. Greenpark here is 160 acres plus 700 houses, 2,500 residents. Okay. So when you do scale, it gives you some competitive advantage because if you get it right, it's an impressive development. It's a development where people want to come and stay. It's a shop window as well. It's easy to see the shop window. If you just do an apartment in Kilimani, it's an apartment in Kilimani. It's difficult to have differentiation in the market if it's just a fairly compact development. Whereas we've got a wide canvas to paint on here and our other developments. And if we paint the right picture, then we sell houses and we push on.
Okay. Yeah, I know, different people value different things at different times in their life. Mm-hmm. I know when I first moved to Kenya, I was like, I need an apartment close to the city, so like Kileleshwa worked really well. Yeah. Now I'm to the point where it's like, all right, this is a loud and noisy neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get a dog. It's hard to have a dog in an apartment.
Yeah.
You know, I want to have a garden.
Yeah.
You know, so now I feel like I'm in the point where don't want an apartment. I'm looking for, you know, standalone.
No, great. I'll be delighted to show you around later and maybe do a deal.
You know, the expressway makes it easy to get to Westlands every day.
The expressway was a godsend to us, you know. I mean, we were sitting on a bit of inventory when the expressway opened. And within 6 weeks, we had no inventory left.
Wow, really?
It was a game changer, you know. I mean, I stay here and our office is here. And going to meetings in Nairobi before the expressway, we would leave here at 6:45 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and maybe get to Nairobi at 8:30. You might get there at 7:30,
Really?
but you to leave that early for a 9 o'clock meeting.
Yeah.
Now we leave 45 minutes before a meeting, and we're very confident we're going to get there.
Yeah.
So it's very commutable now, whereas it was a thought before, you know.
You know, that was one of the things, because one of the individuals who works on my team actually, you know, stayed here during COVID.
Okay.
And said, you know, during COVID, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have to commute to the office. But, you know, I think after COVID, he moved back to the city.
Okay.
And then now he's like, I kind of wish I was back out, because the expressway just makes things so much easier.
It does. And, you know, comparison between, you know, an apartment in central Nairobi where you may pay 25, 28 million or more. For the same money, you can buy a 4-bedroom house here with a front and back garden and security and play parks to bring the kids up and a place to take the dog for a walk and all of these things. So it's a balance, you know. Obviously, land is cheaper here, so you can give more of it for the same cost. And it's just really a balance for families to make their mind up, you know. But good enough, it's popular. You know, a lot of people decide the trade-off of the commute distance is well worth it when you get the quality of life that an estate like this offers.
Absolutely. Now, I know, you know, you do not just have Greenpark here in Athi River. Take us through a few of your other developments that you have.
Well, this was our first development, and it's our flagship development. It's, you know, it's 99% completed now. We've just got a few things to finish off. We then moved to the coast. We've got Pazuri at Vipingo, where we bought land from Vipingo Ridge, 105 acres. We're doing 250 units there, which again is a fairly spacious development. You know, the density is similar to here.
And everyone wants to have a place at the coast.
Yeah, it's proven quite popular, you know, and it's a mix of holiday homes, second homes, and residences.
Okay.
You know, Mombasa and the alley's getting a bit congested now, and people are quite happy to move a bit further out.
Yeah.
So that's moving okay. We've got a couple of hospitality offers. We've got Lake Elementaita Mountain Lodge, which is a 50-room lodge overlooking Lake Elementaita. We've got the Sundowner Hotel here. We've got Lukenya Plains just along the road, 5-minute drive from here, which is basically going to be another Greenpark. You know, we ran out of land here, so it's very similar development just next door, and that's 150 acres. That'll be a 10-year project there.
Okay.
We're also about to start on Kiambu, which is a very popular side of Nairobi, as you know, more popular than the Mombasa Road side, so there's a premium on value. And we bought a 300-acre coffee farm there, quite near Tattoo City.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing, again, about five units per acre there.
Okay.
That should be quite attractive.
It's a fairly diversified portfolio.
It is, but always with the same kind of underlying theme, you know, which is, you know, an area that's popular near a main road, sufficient size of land to do something a bit special on, and scale. You know, scale's important because a 1-acre site where you're doing maybe 10 units, it's almost as much work as a 100-acre site.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the same challenges in terms of permits, permissions, master planning, design, mobilisation, marketing, traction, sales. So it's easier in a way to do a few larger scale developments than a whole bunch of smaller ones.
Yeah. If you're going to put all that effort into the paperwork.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that makes sense. I never thought of it that way in terms of, you know, making it easier.
Yeah. And once you get going, it's repetitive. You know, it's really, you're waking up each morning saying, well, I know what I'm going to do, and we just carry on. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you are, one of the main majority investor in Superior Homes. I'm curious, from your standpoint, do you feel that this has been, the greatest investment you've made in your life?
It's certainly the most interesting and the most satisfying. You know, and in terms of money, speaking personally, I don't like wake up every day and think how much money I'm going to make today and how much money is this particular house going to make and so on. I kind of wake up every day thinking, I want to enjoy the day. I want to enjoy who I'm working with. I want to do something that's worthwhile. I've always found that money and profits follow a decent business proposal and a good business culture. So that's really what drives me, rather than squeezing every extra dollar out of every acre.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, that's important. They always say, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah, well, that's exactly my philosophy.
Awesome. Now, I'm curious, on the leadership side, what qualities do you feel you've needed to, cultivate in order to lead, such a large organization, across multiple geographies, doing multiple things? What's the most important qualities you've had to, perfect in order to do that?
Well, right at the beginning, when I mentioned we met banks at the beginning, the culture in Kenya, it's a very nice culture, but Kenyans don't like to give you bad news or say no.
Yeah.
So when we went round the banks, there was a lot of positivity, and people would nod their heads and say, yeah, a few $1 million, that's fine, But in the event, we never get any money from banks.
Yeah.
So I had to lean on all my UK business resources and cash and so on to start the business. As a result, we couldn't afford to recruit, top people. We recruited kids 23, 25 years old, some younger, about 6 or 7. And the challenge was to mold them into an effective management team, which we did over 2 or 3 years. And I loved the process. It was hands-on, and it was creating a culture for the business. And that culture, I'm keen to keep on a day-to-day basis now. Okay. So that was the biggest challenge, and it still remains a challenge, is recruiting people that have got the willpower and the wish to develop their own personality and their own ability within the business.
Okay, and I agree with you completely on the honesty side. Just I'm someone, as an American, I'm like, I don't care how bad the news is, just tell me now.
Oh, for sure.
Because if I have to find out myself, it's not going to be as comfortable.
No, for sure. And it took me 6 months to figure it out,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd been home at night thinking, we've cracked it, This bank's going to lend us the money, we're fine, But it didn't happen. So it's just a lesson learned cultural-wise.
Yeah. Now, around real estate investment, in terms of any asset class in Kenya, real estate is what I would consider the most popular asset class. Maybe right now it's government securities, but historically real estate's been number one. I'm curious, are there any myths that you often run into around real estate investment, that you think people need to unlearn or adjust their concept of?
Well, I think real estate generally throughout the world is something that people have an affinity for, a desire for, a natural instinct for. I want to own real estate. And often, traditionally in economies, it does grow in value faster than inflation, or at least as quick as inflation. So it's a decent investment to make. And it's a personal investment. It's something that you can enjoy rather than a government security, which really you can just look at a piece of paper, So there's emotional reasons for real estate, which I certainly share these things, I share the emotion for real estate. In terms of the myths, as far as Kenyans go, again, very conservative, and there's myths around all changes to be suspicious, suspicious that if it's a new introduction of technology or a new way of doing things, then you must be trying to con me, like you've got an agenda here, whereas there is genuine new things being done that are good for everybody, good for the developer and good for the buyer as well. So that's one thing I think where people can maybe change their approach a wee bit and look at the broader picture from time to time.
Okay, interesting. Now, I want to talk about Coast a little bit, because I may need a place on Coast, depending on how business goes the next few months.
Nice, okay, nice.
So you mentioned Vipingo. That's what, 200, 250 units?
Yeah.
Okay.
250.
And, one of the things I have noticed in Kenya, which, I don't know, is quite different than what you see in American real estate, is, at least I've always run into in American real estate, people want big land, smaller house. Where I've seen in Kenya, it often is small land, as big of a house as you can fit on that land.
Yeah.
And then your only yard is your driveway.
Yeah.
And that frustrates me, because I've been looking, as we were talking before this, for a place.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, from your perspective, because, I've seen your development here. There is, green space, Greenpark.
Yeah.
You actually get much more than, hey, your wall is less than a meter from the side of your house.
Sure.
So I'm just curious, kind of what, why did you take that route? Because it's quite unique from much of what I've seen.
Ultimately, because it's a much more pleasing place to live, And you talk about capital appreciation. The first bungalows we brought to the market here, we brought at 3.98 for a 4-bedroom bungalow, and that 4-bedroom bungalow is now selling for 23 million. So people, and we don't set the price, the market sets the price.
Yeah.
We're a developer, we'll keep pushing up the price until the market says, whoa, we're not buying anymore, right? So the market always sets the price. As your sales velocity starts to slow down, then you hold your price until it starts to speed up again. And that's the market telling you what they value your product at. So the market liked our density, Initially, there was a bit of resistance, they thought we're mad building this development so far from the city and all the rest of it. Yeah. But the trailblazers, the pioneers, made a lot of money out of their investment, and great good luck to them. They deserve to. So the space works, it works for us. It's a pleasing product to be part of, and the market ultimately likes it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Having said that, you're right in terms of plot coverage. Part of our business strategy is we buy a big site and we'll carve out maybe a quarter of the site into what we call self-build plots, and we sell them fast, we sell them quick. That gives us the return on the cost of the big plot. Okay. So we can be more relaxed about the development period of the big plot, because we don't have the huge investment in the land, so we sell the self-build plots. And the self-build plot buyers, they absolutely use all the space that they can use on that plot. They build these huge houses, which they're very happy with. But maybe another important aspect of our development is the legals, the rules and regulations, the deed of covenants and so on, which we were lucky enough to get right. Part of the process, I moved around looking at developments, looked in America, Florida, Mexico, Johannesburg and South Africa, and came up on a particular development in Joburg where I can't even remember why, but the developer gave me their legal document suite. And it was a really well considered suite of legal documents. And we based ours on that suite of documents.
Okay.
So because we sell leases, the owners aren't allowed to do certain things like put up a high-rise in their front garden or paint funny colours or keep chickens and things like that. And it's really, really important, I think, to have these rules and regulations, because it makes for a sustainable development. I said to my team from day one, I want to come back in 20 years and I want to see Greenpark still flourishing with these rules and regulations. And sure enough, it is still flourishing, and it's only because we got the legals right at the beginning.
Yeah. I think that's important, because I've seen, places where, it may be an older development and such, but once, those rules stop being enforced, everything, kind of just becomes messy really quickly.
Yeah.
I don't want to give an example. I know an example.
I think we all,
In
I think we all
Nairobi.
know examples.
But, of a very nice, well put together development. But now you're seeing, goats in the backyards and different things that, some people who buy in a structured development don't want that.
Yes.
They don't want to be woken up by roosters at 4:30 a.m.
Sure.
every day.
Sure.
That's from personal experience I'm running into now in Kileleshwa.
Yeah.
It's a nice place, but roosters at 4:30 in the morning, rent is way too high to have to deal with that.
No, I agreed on that. And it brings other challenges as well because, for instance, here we've got Greenpark Estate Management Services, which every homeowner has a share in. So there's 700 shareholders of the management company.
Ah, okay.
And, the AGM, these shareholders direct the strategy and policy of the management company, like who does what, what's allowed, what isn't allowed. And as a developer, I'm sure you've come across it, the developer and the homeowners generally fall out at a fairly early date. And the developer can't wait to disappear and get away from any warranty claims or issues and so on. And our strategy is completely different. We're still here. We're represented on the board.
Yeah.
And we deal with the tensions. There's some of the homeowners, shareholders think, well, we're wealthy developers. We should be doing this. We should be doing that. Our point is, well, we've provided this. We've met our obligations. And then you've got to meet in the middle somewhere along the line and just try and compromise and keep the majority of people happy. And that's quite a tricky thing to do, but it's worthwhile because it makes the development thrive. And again, it's our shop window. People come here, they're buying at the Kenyan Plains up the road, they see here what that's going to be. And they say, okay, fine, we'll buy into that.
Yeah, because I know I've had issues, I keep bringing up issues in Kileleshwa. The building's 3 years old. The paint should not be falling off the building at 3 years old. There are just certain things that happen. And I know that's the case with my building where, once the developer was done, he's like,
no, he's away.
Adios.
Yeah.
The management company deals with them. Poor management company. It's not paid enough to be repairing, developer issues.
Sure.
Now, this gets me into my next question. What do you see is ongoing the biggest challenge facing the specifically greater Nairobi real estate sector?
But I think the microeconomy in Kenya is the biggest challenge at the moment in terms of the amount of money in circulation.
Just low velocity of money.
It's desperate. Our sales are staying up remarkably strongly, but the cash collection is desperate. People with good intentions sign up for payment plans or payment dates or completion dates, but through things out of their control, they can't pay.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, fine, close then, just we'll go away. But who do you replace them with? There's just no money in circulation. And we hope that cycle will change in the near future and money will come back into circulation. In terms of other challenges, not so much for us because we tend to be on the outskirts. We don't tend to be in the middle of the city where you can't do much about it. You can't do much about it if the water doesn't come or the power goes off or the streets are full of fumes and so on. You can't do much about that. In the outskirts, you've got a wee bit more control in terms of what goes on.
Because you have to develop part of your own infrastructure as well.
It's
not just tapping into, the local assets that are already there.
No, it's not. But that can bring its own benefit. For example, at the Kenyan Plains, we're going to sign a contract this afternoon, actually, for a power provision, and that's sustainable power. It's going to be completely off-grid, no KPLC. So it's solar, battery backup, and the people were signing the contract with smart meters and cheaper electricity during the day than at night. So quite a sophisticated setup. And it's very much a trial. If that works, all our developments will be off-grid.
Okay.
And the affordable housing that we're hoping to start next year, again, completely off-grid in terms of water, power, sewerage, garbage recycling.
Yeah.
So really moving ahead with the sustainability agenda.
Okay, yeah, because I know specifically in Kilimani and parts of Lavington, that's a big issue they're running into now. Whereas the public infrastructure is not keeping pace with private building.
Yeah.
And so now, you're running out of water multiple times a day because there's no water in the mains.
Yeah.
Because, within 10 years, you've had 20 high rises come up.
Yeah.
And the demand is just so high.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really important piece as well. That would give me a lot of peace of mind, knowing, hey, we're not relying on any one entity for power or for water.
For sure. And it puts Kenya ahead in many ways. I mean, in the UK, power is a big issue. Power is expensive in the UK. And it's extremely difficult to change the status quo because of, the historic contracts and supply chain and all of these things. Whereas here, if this works along the road, and I'm sure it will, then we're completely cutting out all that infrastructure.
Yeah.
You don't need a grid. You don't need the power transmission lines. You don't need the central generation. You just do it all on the one site, and you've got control over it in terms of quality and supply.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we're kind of coming to the end of our discussion now, but I got one last question.
Okay.
I ask all of my guests this, so it's required.
Okay, I'll do my best. Sounds challenging.
No, but this question is more about you personally. When you were first starting your career, what did you spend your first paycheck on?
Well, okay. When I was first starting my career, I started my career washing cars for a car rental company at Glasgow Airport. So I'm very sure that I spent my first paycheck on a few beers.
Okay.
No question.
I think I spent my first paycheck on a suit and a few beers. So yeah. But Ian, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Andrew. Thanks, Andrew.
And I think me and the team will go walk around the development a bit.
Yeah, please. I'm delighted to show you around.
Absolutely. But thank you.